Okay, we are live.
Good, good.
I'm still waiting to catch up to it. Okay, now I'm seeing it.
Apparently, when I fell out of the meeting and rejoined just now, it lost access to my camera. Oh well.
Bill shows that your connection is lost.
Yeah, I think I'm back again already. But I lost my camera connection.
Oh, okay.
Which, since I'm going to share a screen, sort of doesn't matter.
Yeah, man pages work fine in my terminal windows. I haven't had any problem with that at all.
If there's a problem with man and terminal windows, that suggests that Rogue wouldn't work either. Rogue or NetHack was the best thing to debug a term cap because it basically used everything.
I always set my terminal windows to a white background with black text. And I guess man just doesn't work well with that color scheme.
Mm-hmm. If it can't tell the color scheme, you may need to adjust your term cap to match your color scheme.
And it's not really worth the bother. The PDF versions of man pages are a lot easier to read anyway.
You could also have a second tab in your terminal window with a different color profile for reading man pages.
I recently discovered that there's a new feature in some terminal emulators. I couldn't tell you which ones. The one I use is on Windows. But there's a new feature that says, like, you turn it on, every time it encounters a 16 color pair, like a 16 color palette pair of colors that don't go well together, the terminal will reprogram that to another pair of colors. It's easier to see. So I just leave that on, and I don't have to worry about clashing color schemes anymore.
Nice.
And on Windows, ConEMU and the broken Windows terminal have that. I know that several Linux terminals that also work on BSD also have it, but I don't know the names. But look up the concept and you'll find it.
I use GNOME Terminal, and seems to work fine in most cases.
Having done some things that explicitly set colors that this thing might object to, I'm slightly horrified at the idea of it deciding what to do for colors.
I use mate terminal for most things, and then the old-fashioned X term for a few things.
I have to say, I had to uninstall the Windows terminal because it has a Quake mode with like, hold the Windows key and hit backtick, and that pulls up Quake mode. You can turn that off in settings, but it doesn't do anything. Turning it off does not have any effect on the actual setting. And I had already decided I'm using that shortcut for a window manager tweak. So I fought with it for a day, and I just said, well, I guess I can't use this. And fortunately, you can uninstall Windows Terminal. But that's that's the state of Windows. Like a critical part like that just takes a shortcut and never gives it back, even though it pretends to let you give it back.
I don't suppose you have the ACK replacement for grep on the system where you are attaching to with this Windows Terminal Manager that remaps colors?
I use Cygwin to get all the GNU utilities.
That's good. ACK is not a GNU utility.
What is AC? Is it ACK, and what does it do?
It's a grep-like program written in Perl so that you're allowed to use the most Perl-compatible regular expression language known to man, that which is in the Perl installed on your system.
I'm sure that would work on Windows under Cygwin.
Oh yeah, but it would need to be either if your terminal is running Windows as opposed to connected someplace else. Yeah, but yes, it'll work with Cygwin's Perl, but I don't believe it's bundled with Cygwin.
So you're not talking about it because of it's stealing my global shortcut key. You're just saying, hey, this is a thing, check it out.
I'm talking about the color mapping.
Oh, okay.
I wrote.
Well, the color mapping happens in the terminal graphics driver.
And what I'm saying
like
is,
yeah.
Did I just successfully share my screen? I think I did.
Yeah.
I wrote this. The term module that ACK uses to do color highlighting, among other things, uses a 0 to 5 scale.
Yep.
To specify RGB.
And I'm pretty sure if you turn on the
I
feature,
I thought the color help we had was ugly and not very helpful, so I wrote this one that uses color solid theory to display the 6x6x6 possibilities for both foreground and background.
Yep.
And I have a feeling the
it looks like your
auto
terminal is
remapping.
playing with some of them.
Well, the ones that are illegible on my terminal.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's doing what you were describing, and it would bother me to have this displayed with such corrections. Although, it's good that it would display with those corrections in a terminal that had corrections so that the user would see what they're going to get on that terminal.
Well,
but it's not what you get on any proper terminal.
The purpose of the feature that I'm addressing in ConEMU and Windows Terminal and several Unix terminal programs, the purpose of this is that first you have in your terminal, you say, I want to pick a color scheme for the 16 color palette, and you've got a color scheme.
Yeah.
And that color
Yeah.
scheme works great with most of your programs. And then you open up Midnight Commander and it wants to put like cyan on blue, and that just does not work with your color scheme. So
Yeah.
if you are if the program is specifying two 16 color color set colors, two 4-bit colors, a foreground and background, and those colors don't come out good in your color scheme, then it will reprogram those colors. But if your program is using not 4-bit color, I think this feature that I'm talking about doesn't even touch it, because
Okay.
that's not going through your palette. But it's the 16
I
color
see.
set
I
that's
see
like
what you're saying. Okay. Gotcha.
in some
Gotcha.
color
Okay.
sets, like cyan on top of blue looks okay. Some of them they don't. And the person who's writing the software on the back end says, I want to put cyan and blue because it works in my terminal.
Yeah.
And everybody's got different values for the colors. But yeah, if
And
you specify the actual color value, you should be fine.
right. And yeah, good old 4-bit color. Yeah. Yeah. I, that takes me back. Okay.
I was really happy to find that feature because I would always end up picking the color scheme that looks the best and then open up Midnight Commander and I can't read it.
I haven't used Midnight Commander, its competitors, in quite a while. I occasionally have to do a little diagnostics on mom's Windows computer or run Windows once a year to do my taxes, but I probably do need to install Strawberry Pearl on my cheap ass Windows Mini so that we can debug hack Windows bugs.
I'm living on Windows on my work laptop because of
Yeah,
virtual machine performance and because of I was provided with a Kensington dock that refuses to work with Thunderbolt mode in Linux.
understood. Um, yeah, my work laptop was used to launch either Cygwin or MKS Toolkit or Hummingbird X Windows uh, and get me to the real computers, and that was securely, and that was about it.
Yep. I read a story on somebody's blog from a few years ago that says, I do all of my work on an iPad with a keyboard. And this person who's writing has a Linux desktop virtual machine at a cloud provider.
Yep.
And everything that's running on the iPad is either a browser or a terminal.
Yep. I had at that old job, I had one of the first Linux virtual desktops in the test environment. The lab group hooked up. Of course, I'd been using the dev server that I'd shepherded the requisition for as my virtual desktop before that. And I do have a keyboard for my 10-inch Android tablet too. Used it to enter comments on the previous.
Looks like we're getting quite a bit of turnover.
Everyone who's here is not having any Jitsi trouble, right? Seems to be in a good mood today.
We got a good connection.
I wonder if Windows Terminal has addressed my "you won't give me my shortcut back" issue. I don't think I actually made an issue for it, and I don't remember if anybody else did. I was just fed up and just uninstalled it.
Test 1, 2, 3. Okay.
4, 5, 6.
Yeah, apparently I was on my Wi-Fi as opposed to on my hardwire network, and that would be why I fell off twice.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, fix that. Have to flip back later.
Yeah, I might be getting a hardwire connection soon after so many years with just Wi-Fi.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah, my sister just texted me, and it turns out I qualify for this free program through the government.
Yeah. I've seen one of those setting up a table outside the grocery. That's good.
I just signed up with Comcast. The lowest 3 tiers were 50 megabits per second, 100 megabits, and 200 megabits.
Nice.
The 50 and 100 were like completely free, and the one for 200 megabits, that was free for just 12 months. And then God knows what would happen after that. So I figured it was safer to go with the 100 megabits.
Why don't you go for the free one first and see how it works?
The 100 megabits one is free.
Good. Free is a good price.
Yeah.
Not from my perspective. I have to pay taxes to support it.
Well, Jabber being online is a public good.
I can't argue with that.
At least once a month.
Actually, it's just once because I'm never disconnected.
Yeah, but I don't vouch for your behavior the rest of the month.
I guess, Bill, we can start the meeting whenever you want to.
Okay.
Jabber, can you mute so we don't get beeps all through his meeting? Thank you.
I was going to do that if he didn't. Okay, this is the meeting that used to be our key signing circular firing squad. We're no longer promoting PGP, and if you want to know why, it's in previous years' presentations. But the tradition of having a Cryptology annual news update and historical vignette as September continues despite not having a key signing. So here we are. Starting with the news, I posit that out of an abundance of caution is what CIOs and their PR flex use as a translation for, oh, damn. OpenSSL had a vulnerability 10 years after Heartbleed that was pretty much the same. Wasn't quite as bad as initially flagged, but hopefully you've applied the patches in the last 10 months. There's this new technology called passkeys that you may have seen on the discussion list, which use your eyeball and your phone being in range to log you into things instead of passwords and random clock numbers or one-time pins. The over on the Wednesday Senior Citizen Free Software Group, a comment was made that this is making things extra hard on personal representatives, powers of attorney, and executors, since it requires both the Bluetooth and the eyeball. But somebody else there said that they can also provide dongles that override that, which is a good thing. So they've thought about it. Most of our cryptography uses extended precision arithmetic. Well, there was a bug in the underlying integer computations. Just wonderful. LastPass. Supposedly, their breach didn't harm their customers, at least if they had a strong passphrase. There have been reports of CryptoCoin wallets whose passphrases were saved in a LastPass bundle getting burgled. On the other hand, as we'll see later in the list of oopsies, there may have been a different way people got their LastPass, got their Bitcoin stolen. So maybe it wasn't LastPass after all, or maybe their strong passphrase that used all 4 character types wasn't all that strong. Unclear. We've still got cute named exploits. I'm only telling you the ones that have to do with cryptology. Zenbleed, Collide, Power, Downfall, Inception are all in the category of hardware observables bleeding over from one virtual machine or process to another, so that a process that shouldn't be able to watch you read your key can watch you read your key if 17 different assumptions are granted. It's not half as scary as they want you to think it is, but it still makes using the cloud for anything that's high privacy, like banking, a threatening idea. More startling, secure radios that are the European and rest of world equivalent of the American P25 and trunked Motorola trunking radio systems had their encryption reverse engineered. As usual, if you defy Kirchhoff's principle that the having the device in hand and full understanding of the device shouldn't break the device, only getting a hold of the key should break the device. Well, commercial companies like proprietary encryption where the algorithm is secret because it keeps competition only to members of the club. You can't have off-brand open source products competing with their high-profit proprietary products. So they insist on inventing their own proprietary encryptions, which regularly turn out to be crap once they're understood. And this again happened. Now, I'm not buying that the export anywhere, including the countries we hate version, used many less than the full 80 bits in it that you had to enter for the key in the actual key, because before 1997, and this is an old standard, 40 bits was the maximum size allowed for export. Think, Netscape 1.0, and that it used 32 bits instead of 40 bits is ho hum. Yeah, it's 128 factor. But back then, anybody that thought the export approved one wasn't crap wasn't paying attention. So the fact that a lot of police departments in countries we didn't like adopted this meant that, yeah, the NSA and even second-rate country intelligence agencies could listen to their radios. Shocking, I say. More interesting to me is the overall protocol used for all 4 and now 6, because they've issued 2 new ones after this breach was responsibly disclosed. The protocol uses the network time to set the initialization vector for the encryption, and network time is not authenticated, so it's spoofable, so that you can use a captured device as an oracle to guess keys. Is that incompetence, or was that a backdoor inserted so that national technical means at the big friendly countries could read everybody's stuff? We don't know. Not good, though. There's been much discussion about how ChatGPT and Autopilot and similar large language model, not really machine learning, not really artificial intelligence, but they're artificial ignorance systems, will feed you back other people's copyright code or copyright paragraphs, and so automate violation of copyrights. Well, it's also regurgitated people's secret keys when you ask it to write an encryption module for you, because it memorized the embedded secret key in the source code that it memorized for how to write a secret key encryption module. So ChatGPT gets assigned to the Dunning-Kruger cryptography department, along with all the people that are rolling their own incompetently for their cryptocurrencies and proprietary radios. Apparently, Python has an encryption PKCS sort of library called Fernet. And it works well enough that malware authors have started using Fernet for their payloads. So I ask, should the Fernet using malware be called malortware? But it looks like it's actually, if you don't screw up the key management, a decent encryption, because it's not only using good standards, it's using them correctly. But of course, key management is everything. We'll get to that. Key management is hard. Look who lost their keys this year. Microsoft had an expired signing key exfiltrated using the SolarWinds network management hacks, which were exploited by both the Russians and the Chinese, and probably the Koreans, North Koreans, and who knows who else. And then Azure failed to check if modules that were signed by a trusted signing key were signed with an expired signing key, and so Azure accepted malware signed with the exfiltrated expired signing key. Fault chain longer than one. Got to look out for those fault chains longer than one, guys. Whoever Microstar International, I guess they're motherboard firmware type people, had its UEFI signing key stolen. It says last month, that would be April. GitHub accidentally published a repo that contained their SSH host key. They took the repo down as fast as they noticed. They weren't sure how long it had been posted dirty, so they had to go through and change all of their SSH host keys, which caused everyone to get a "you may be being man in the middle" warning until they flushed their remembered GitHub host key, and trains everybody to distrust the "you may be being intercepted" message. Thank you. So, first, don't add any secrets to your GitHub repos, even if they're private repos, because you might decide later to publish your private repo. And when you're publishing a private repo public, you need to comb it not just for licenses and intellectual property, but you need to comb it for secrets. And we'll see more key management problems. I've been saying for years that crypto coins aren't crypto and they don't get to steal my word. And they aren't coins either. It's Ponzi all the way down. But there was a new bon mot, Bitcoin, the most powerful bug bounty program ever. And both Gerard, the 50,000-foot blockchain guy, and Nick Weaver have done some nice writing in the last year on just how bad things are in the world of crypto coins. You can read their stuff on the links once I give Jabber the stuff. Yes, Jabber, I'll send you the not only this file but the one with extended notes. And key management is hard again. A so-called fintech startup, Prime Trust, what a name, lost the encryption key to its hardware wallet and the recovery key, and therefore lost their pile of Bitcoins or whatever coins they were hoarding. Some people deserve to be bankrupt. Key management. Another cutely named one. A flaw in a popular Bitcoin implementation library exposed users of it who followed standard cookbooks to create a wallet with a basically easy to guess key for the wallet. Again, is this Dunning-Kruger Club cryptography? Is this incompetence because they didn't read the "don't roll your own crypto" rule, and thought they were the exception because they're the smartest guy in the room? Or was it an intentional backdoor to facilitate thefts? There is some hint that the library ceased being maintained after the theft started, not after it was blown open. So it may have been intentional all along. We don't know. Why is it called MilkSad? Because if you generate a many word passphrase with a system time of 0, the lack of entropy other than system time results in a bunch of words starting with milk sad. So that's one. And the library people claim, well, our library documentation says never use the BX seed, but the O'Reilly book for how to do Bitcoin says use the BX seed for your wallet. So while some people say this was a novice mistake, and there is the old rule of never attribute to malice, it does look like somebody was scamming the scam. It's Ponzi or just embezzlement all the way down. If it hurts when you do that, don't do that. Next. Okay. Lately, we've had to discuss quantum cryptography because people are worried about it. Quick blast through what we've discussed in previous years. Quantum computation is measured in qubits, not bits, where a bit can be some percentage true. So this is like fuzzy math, except in hardware, quantum hardware. There are two kinds of quantum hardware. The huge qubit counts in quantum annealing systems are great for many practical problems, not good for cryptography. The ones, and they're actually relatively easy to build. They're sort of practical now. The true quantum cell circuit logics, the practical machines have a smaller number of qubits and have reliability issues, but they're the ones that, in theory, could have a major impact on cryptography. Now, why are we discussing post-quantum cryptography before quantum computing actually succeeds? Because if quantum computing does what we think and hope it will be able to do for numeric computation, it will make obsolete RSA public key and Diffie-Hellman public key cryptography, which is the mainstay of the original PKI public key infrastructure that we've all been using. So we have to, on the off chance that quantum computation actually makes quantum cryptanalysis work, which it does in theory, and in theory and practice are the same. In practice, not so much. But in case it actually works, we need to start pivoting to replacement public key encryptions and signatures that fit the PKI recipes that we've been using, but use encryption primitives that are not susceptible to quantum cryptanalysis. In theory, Shor's algorithm or Grover's or the VQF can break anything that requires factoring elliptic curves or discrete log being hard. They may be hard on classical computers, but in theory, they're not hard on quantum computers. What is hard on quantum computers is doing large computations between the mean time between failure. So we're currently at the state we were with vacuum tube computers in the late 30s and very early 40s, where the mean time between failure of vacuum tubes used in logic circuits was less than the running time of an algorithm. The British Post Office had a genius who figured out how to make the vacuum tubes reliable during World War II, and we sort of discussed that in previous years. And we have to take this seriously before it occurs, because if it occurs, there is a failure forward secrecy problem. The NSA has the world's largest data lake in Utah. That's a Greenpeace photo there that they've photoshopped a blimp onto. Either that or they flew the blimp over it and took a picture from their biplane. I'm not sure which, and I don't care. It's a beautiful picture. They're already saving messages that they can't break for when they're breakable, either because a key is exposed or new technology lets them. We know they're doing it. They got the budget to do it. There's the building. And it's worked for them in the past. both Venona and G projects, the precursor to the NSA, saved messages they couldn't break in World War II and early Cold War, and they figured out how to break them later. And that helped them round up the atom spies and all sorts of other things. And so, they have track record at hoarding old messages and processing them later when they get a new clue. You don't have to read Snowden to figure this out. And if you want to keep your security clearance, don't read Snowden. So, National Bureau of Standards, who, the guilty of changed their name, now they're NIST, okay, whatever, has initiated the post-quantum cryptography standards process to plan and compete and carefully choose replacements for RSA, elliptic curve, Diffie-Hellman that will provide protection in a post-quantum cryptography world. And they started this process several years ago and are well down the road and are working to keep us safe. So this is being run the same way their AES and SHA-3 competitions worked. They had the third, post-quantum cryptography conference last March. They released a video on how to prepare your PKI system in April. The White House Cybersecurity Initiative also discussed it. All sorts of good stuff. There's an academic paper. This is the new stuff, not from here. Maybe obvious I started talking about this here. There's a Chinese academic paper claiming that theoretically RSA 2048 is in play for current available quantum computing systems. This is theoretically accurate, shouldn't be a surprise. The IBM system has 433 qubits usable for real algorithms, and with Shor algorithm pre-processing, you only need 370 for a 2048 RSA key. So in theory, there's reason to believe they haven't actually done it, and that the meantime between failure of quantum consistency may prevent it working for the foreseeable future. But somebody needs to try it on the IBM system and tell us what happened. I'd be surprised if nobody has done so yet. But if somebody's done it and it worked, they probably got told that's classified. So yeah, I'm a little leery. The Bruce Schneier, the sort of my opinion leader on such matters, wrote a nice essay this year on you can't rush post-quantum computing cryptography standards. And yeah, he's pretty right on that. The good news is that the FIDO people have quantum resistant hybrid signing for their two-factor auth. That means they're layering classical and post-quantum algorithms so that if either breaks, you're still protected by the other one. A lot of the PQC stuff will be double layered like that initially. Bad news is there is a not just theoretical, but not side channel attack against an implementation of one of the algorithms that's in the standards track of the competition mentioned. This does not mean the algorithm is broken. Even though you'll see some articles that claim that by headline editors that care more about clicks than they do about truth. But I will disagree with Bruce about just a side channel attack. The Tetra project that I mentioned in the first segment used a side channel attack to rip the firmware out of a supposedly protected proprietary radio. Side channel attacks side channel attacks mean that you need to keep other people from executing on the same machine, and need to make sure if the lid is taken off, memory is zeroed actively or something. It's just adds to the danger that there are ways to combine layers of attacks. So the current schedule, draft standards were released last month. That FIPS, which is Federal Information Processing Standards. Fifth conference is scheduled for April. They have published the request for comments on the draft standards, and they will discuss how they respond to those comments at the conference, and then later next year they will issue, presumably slightly revised, FIP standards for the post-quantum winning algorithms, and then implementations that are complying will be allowed on federal computers. Once certification is available in 25, 26, then there'll be FIPS approved implementations, and after their FIPS approved implementations, they will start requiring FIPS approved implementations for use on federal unclassified systems, and presumably similar but more strenuous for classified. In addition to the side channel attack, there are a bunch of known weaknesses. Of the 69 entrants in rounds 1 to 4 of the competition, 62 of 69 were broken by their competitors' red teams, and 2 of the front runners were knocked out that way. One of the still front runners has a classical problem that if there's a lack of randomness in salting the small things being encrypted, if you're encrypting small things like passwords, we've been warning against encrypting small things for literally decades. It leaks information, and people might think that, well, people aren't going to be that stupid, are they? Well, it keeps happening. So whether people are too stupid or lazy, or think they're smarter than the previous generation of programmers, we need to remind people, lack of salt, hello. Lack of salt is key reuse. If you break system random, you may be generating host keys for SSH with random seed of 0 or random seed of low bits of clock time, which is not terribly random. There's just too many instances of people thinking they're perfectly protected, and the amount of randomness that went into their random number was so low that somebody that notices that there was no randomness in their randomness can predict what their secret random number was and unwind things from there. It happens just too often. The Tetra IV vulnerability that might or might not be a backdoor is another example of this. It's actually an old example. It was only recently disclosed, but yeah. So that's the state of post-quantum. This year's historical vignette: NSA and consumer products. Back in the early 80s, people realized that hauling around a luggable computer so that you could do encrypted messaging or email from the airport payphone was bad for your carry-on limit, and maybe they should design a pocket telex machine that would be easier to carry than the big luggable that I inherited on my desk in 1980 and was a lot of fun, but it was too heavy to take on the road, which is why I inherited it. But meant that if I was willing to give up my desk phone, I could work from the office instead of going down to the terminal room. It was fun. Except when my office mate wanted to receive a phone call. So a company in the Netherlands developed the Pocket Telex PX1000 text communicator, which they used an OEM to build the system. Had an alphanumeric keyboard, a one-line display, and had built-in DES standard encryption, and actually had an acoustic coupler that and would still fit in your pocket. Amazing. They mostly sold these through the giant company Philips, but they had other resellers in specific countries and even sold a few under their own brand name. Well, NSA and GCHQ thought that letting civilians have access to 56-bit DES was just a little bit too much, and leaned on Philips government systems and had Philips government systems lean on Philips consumer because, as mentioned under Tetra, you were supposed to only be selling 40-bit encryption to naughty countries. And we weren't supposed to be giving 56-bit encryption to people that we didn't approve of. And so Philips leaned on their original equipment maker, TextLite BV, who quickly came out with a version that had a blue key instead of a red key. The red key says key text code, and came out with a blue key that turned on calculator mode, and that was sold for the next year, while Philips developed an alternative encryption system using an algorithm recommended by the NSA, monitored by TextLite's own programmers, because TextLite didn't want to accept a backdoor. And so they were looking over Philips's shoulder to make sure there wasn't an obvious backdoor in the code that Philips was writing under the NSA design. And NSA offered Philips a large wad of cash for all unsold DES units and for all of the ROMs that TextLight had already burned to make DES units at a nice wholesale profit, to make sure that they weren't still in the retail supply chain. And that NSA approved version got a CR appended to its model number, PX1000CR, CR for crypto. And then shortly after that, a CMail capable version of both the crypto free and CR crypto units came out that could communicate with multiple commercial email providers. This was followed by PX 12,000 and PX 1200 and PX 2000 versions, the latter being manufactured by a different company in Japan than the original OEM's OEM, and also sold under Philips and Textel brands worldwide. I'm going to open this old tweet so that we can see the cute box. This is the 1200. And the funny thing is, the product photo on the box shows a 1200 saying, "This is the TextLight PX1000" on a box that says 1200. Hilarious. And then this is the box of the Philips 1000 with the Textel brand on it also. And Crypto Museum is the Netherlands online and I think real world museum that we'll be referencing frequently. But Foon has the only 1200 in captivity that I'm aware of. So in 2014, a Dutch bachelor's thesis looked into government intervention on consumer hardware, comparing the ROMs of the museum's original edition and CR edition of the PX1000. And the thesis also raised the question, since the Netherlands-based support team for political prisoner Nelson Mandela's preparation for freedom, preparation for return to political life, were using PX1000s to communicate. Was that support team's communications compromised to big power national means? Which was an interesting question. In 2019, the Crypto Museum publicly reported on the above research, which they'd previously supported. In 2021, Steph Marisk completed the analysis of the NSA version, which Ben had only started, and determined that the key space that was actually used was, like on the Tetra, a mere 32 bits being selected from a larger offered key. And he also developed a full break from 17 bits of output. He could compute the message key, which is a very rapid crack of a linear shift feedback register. There'd been a lot of research in the prior decade into rapid convergence of LSFR cracking, which Steph very effectively leveraged here. Awesome bit of work. And he observed other weaknesses that might be a backdoor besides the short key length. Why did the Textel TextLite programmers not notice a backdoor? It combined 4 linear shift feedback registers, which were had maximal period, and they were seemingly combined sensibly, so it's not obviously suspect. However, the implementation leaks some keystream bits. This is a 7-bit ASCII device, which means that you can predict that the high bit of every byte is 0, which means the high bit of every enciphered byte is raw keystream bit. I'm not sure if there were other leaks other than that, but the fact that it was not compressing 8 7-bit characters into 7 8-bit characters before encrypting did mean that it was leaking keystream bits, or expanding your keystream to pad zeros for the high bits. Either way, so it was leaking keystream bits, which, if nothing else, would make detecting key reuse easy. And once you've detected key reuse, you XOR the 2 messages, and you wind up with a message which is one plain text enciphered with the other plain text, which is basically the old book cipher problem. Once you guess one word, you can expand the break in each direction, cross-riffing to dummy, and crack the whole thing by hand, and then you've got the key, and you can do any other message in that key. Very dangerous. And NSA should have realized that allowing the high key bit to escape was dangerous. So did they leave it in intentionally? Maybe. So that's this year's vignette. The Jabber will post the YouTube. I'll send both these slides and the longer form notes file. Actually, since this went fairly quickly, I'm going to switch over to the notes file, which has a bit more on the historical. Here we go. Here's the interior board of one of these devices laid on top of the device. The part of Steph's break was translating the linear shift feedback registers operation into a Boolean functional equivalent, which is this mess of an expression we see here, which put it in a form where a binary satisfaction problem theorem prover, similar to Prolog except for Boolean expressions, could be used to solve it. As with traveling salesmen, this problem is incomplete in general, in theory, but tractable in normal cases. In 2021, solving one of these with the 17 characters of output took 50 seconds on a single thread personal computer, which might have been a bit expensive to do on NSA computers in 1985, but would have been a heck of a lot easier than cracking DES on NSA's craze in 1985. So it was to their advantage. And as mentioned with the leaking key stream, they had other options. Now, why did they not want to do, why did they object to DES going out to everybody? In 1977, the open literature community estimated that you could build a specialized DES cracking machine for $20 million 1977 dollars. The open community's estimate dropped to $1 million in 1993 dollars, which is a double decrease because the dollar was worth less. As far as we know, nobody built one in that period. But with NSA and GCHQ buying multiple Cray ones at $8 million each, I would kind of assume they built at least one. But if they only had one, it would be a scarce resource, and they'd need to allocate it on importance of research basis, the way time on Hubble and Webb space telescopes is allocated by how much science can you get per hour of instrument. And so discouraging the use of DES by people with something to hide and restricting it to friendly governments and banks that we don't need to spy on because they'll tell us what we need to know was preferable. And let's get these people with their pocket telexes using something cheaper to crack. In 1998, the EFF developed actual hardware for $250,000 after there was an internet screensaver hack in 97. For the last decade, I think it's Moxie Marlinspike has had a custom device that was a mere $100K cost to him, FPGAs and graphics processors on a monster board, that he rents time on to crack DES that you want to crack at multiple prices and service levels. And his top price is $1,000, but he's not offering full message cracking. He's only offering breaking of network tokens that he thinks people should stop using. And so to convince people to stop using them, he's making it cheap and easy to break them, which will allow a system security officer to intercept a token, send it to Moxie for cheap, break it, show the auditor, and then the auditor tells the CIO that they have to fix it. And he'll do NTLM challenges for free if you use his preferred challenge, for which he's built the world's largest rainbow table. And there's a 5% chance it won't be in the rainbow table, and then you'll have to pay $20. So if you do a bunch of them, the amortized cost is $1 each. That's pretty cheap to crack DES. But basically, using symmetric encryption on small things was always a bad idea. I assume that's salted, but still, he's got the rainbow table. So the footnotes for the historical vignette on Netherlands versus the NSA are mostly links through the Netherlands Crypto Museum. Good folks. They have many more photos of the device. Also, Steph has a published article in Proof of Concept or Get the Bad Word Out magazine online, a blog, and he has all of his code and PDFs of the academic papers he references in his footnotes on his GitHub. The other computer history museum at Cambridge University, not Bletchley Park in the UK, also has a page on the PX1000. There are 2 copies of Steph's Camp++ talk, and I showed you the tweet on the X site. More pictures. Oh, and this is the cool thing. How did they do an acoustic coupler that fit in your pocket? They used a single bimodal transducer as both microphone and speaker, and you had to physically pivot the handset to switch which direction of half duplex you were using. But that meant it was flat and didn't get too screwed up in your pocket and didn't screw up your pocket too much, but fit in the pocket. I do object to using stereo connectors for power, though. And there was even a printer accessory. Yay! Been around there. And there was a audio recorder interface, as was common back then. It was quite the thing. There was the Scandinavian telephone company Ericsson wrapped the same device in their own off salmon skin. Sure, whatever. There was a Russian version with the Family Doctor software, which was another software option. More interior photos. Look at that corrosion. There we go. And we looked at the 1200. Here is the PX2000. That is an 8x80 terminal emulator screen. This had both VT52 and VT100 emulation. It had a serial port, so you could use this to log into a real computer as well as to send encrypted messages or encrypt files on its built-in storage. This was a nice little unit in 85, 86. It unfortunately just had that really flawed encryption. Now this one, the encryption key was a function G as opposed to its own red key. You used red function to get the red word over the G key. And this one had a full 2-way acoustic coupler built into the bottom that was detachable, which was a different brilliant option. which solved the flat versus inclined problem. After you detached it, you could pivot it. You just needed a rubber band. Brilliant. Kids don't know how lucky they are. Acoustic couplers were the deal once. Memory cards. What more could you ask for? Worked with Telenet, Prestel, Telepac, video text. Somehow it emulated TTY, although I doubt it did a current loop. Since it was European, it used a DIN socket instead of a DB25 connector for serial, which frankly is better for fitting in your pocket anyway. But it was fully backwards compatible with the 1000 CR, so it was obviously the same brain damaged NSA approved encryption. Just a cool little thing. Questions aside from Jabber asking when I'm going to upload?
Yeah, Bill, when are you going to upload?
I'm sorry, that was overmodulated. What did you say?
Well, since Jabber's not going to ask you, when are you going to upload?
Okay. I see Jabber commented on the Tandy Model 100, which was 40 by 8. And yes, in about this time frame, my office had both a Model 100 and a French Textel mini term that we could use. We could take home for the weekend to have remote access through the DARPANET tip to the company machines. And I much preferred the Tandy 100 to the French Minitel. The French Minitel was just a little too mini. By the by, I saw the company that had kits to build a Linux system that was physically very reminiscent of the Tandy Model 100 has released another Pi-based portable computing kit that looks a heck of a lot like a BlackBerry. And you can put a wireless service SIM into it and do telco texting and telco internet, as well as Wi-Fi internet with it, to have a portable texting terminal that's a pocket fit.
Can I add a comment to that?
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I don't remember the name, but I've had in the news and I've been following the story. I saw one review that pointed out that this BlackBerry-like device, it's not really a BlackBerry, but it's kind of a DIY kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same mechanism for a trackball that BlackBerry did years ago. And maybe not the same actual vendor, but the mechanism is the same. And unfortunately, not only is it really slow, like out of the box, but it takes forever to drag your little finger across the trackball, across the screen from one side to the other. But the next version of the BlackBerry that used to have that trackball, the next version after that was an actual BlackBerry, it had a fingerprint joystick. Like you drag your finger across a solid state sensor, and that worked much better than the BlackBerry trackball, which kept falling apart and failing. The new toy doesn't have a scanner optical thing. It's a trackball.
Yes, the trackball was the weakness identified on the otherwise enthusiastic review I saw as
On
well.
the trackball BlackBerry, I went through about four trackballs
Uh-huh.
before I upgraded to one that had a fingerprint scanner sensor.
Yeah.
It didn't record your fingerprint. It would just see your fingerprint move and say that's joystick movement.
So you basically we're talking about a tiny touch sensor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, understood. Um, the of course, some people object that it keeps the cost low by not having a touch screen, which would like also solve the problem of the trackball deficiency. But it's
And all in all, it looks like a nice device. If you want a computer where you can build and program all the parts yourself, go for it. It looks nice.
yeah. The company is Clockwork Pi, and the item is uConsole. Um, the let's see, here we go. This is the first review I saw on it. And the case is all metal, which is delightful in a DIY thing. I haven't checked the price yet.
I
But
think it's reasonable for a small number project. Like
yeah,
you know that when they don't make millions of something, it costs more, but it doesn't cost a lot more than you'd expect.
right. Um, if what I'd need to do is check if the Raspberry Pi software would allow me to configure. If I put my data device SIM card into this, could I configure this to act as a wireless access point? I've got an Alcatel uh, thing that, like a Verizon MiFi, except it's not on Verizon, cellular wireless access point. And if this could work as both a BlackBerry, except it doesn't make phone calls, and as a wireless access point, so that I could have one non-phone SIM card in this instead of adding yet another data plan.
I don't see why you couldn't do that. It comes with I don't is the default operating system Raspbian, the Raspberry Pi version of Debian? If
I
it's not the
believe so.
default, it is an option.
I
And
believe so.
so you've got both the network interfaces are there. They show up in the network manager, and just however you would do that on Debian, that's how you do it.
It should work. I'm just dealing with variant distros, things that should work sometimes just finding the right combination of options doesn't.
Yep.
The Explaining Computers channel has been covering RISC-V single board computers and the like as sort of a sub-thread of episodes, and the he was pleasantly surprised at one of the recent RISC-V offerings. Almost everything worked out of the box. There was still a list of things that didn't work out of the box, but much shorter than he was used to on RISC-V boards and RISC-V versions of operating systems. And it was close enough that he committed to doing 1 week of using these 2 RISC-V boards, that one of them he'd had to do some work to configure, and one of them worked out of the box as his primary desktop, and he reported back at the end of the week. The one thing he couldn't do on the RISC-V was he couldn't edit the video for production. The Final Cut video edit had to be done on the big computer, mostly because you sort of might expect that on an ARM-based unit, but on a RISC-V, you'd sort of like to think it would have the oomph to do video editing, but it just didn't work. But based on those sorts of thinking, I'm not assuming Raspbian is going to let me do it easily without getting really nerdly about it. Is it going to work out of the box such that I can just move my SIM card over and be happy?
I'd say maybe you could try it in an emulator, but if you try to do this experiment in an emulator, you're probably not going to get access to a SIM card, and so you won't have all of the components that you need to test.
Right, and with emulation, either emulating hardware doesn't work or it makes it look really easy and it's hiding the complexities, one or the other. But anyway, this uConsole, this Clockwork Pi company has a bunch of interesting things. They were the ones with the Model 100 sort of box.
If you go for their Model 100 looking box, be aware that it's small keys and it's half the size of a Model 100, and you're probably not going to touch type on it.
Right. If it's not going to be as big enough to touch type, I think I want to go for this smaller one.
Yeah.
With the all metal case that would actually fit in the pocket. And it's a simple enough assembly. The video that I showed the start of, he does the unboxing doing the full assembly. It's everything socketed. And it comes with the hex driver to drive the screws in the corners. It's as DIY goes, it's simpler than IKEA. So I was taken by it, but
but it's still, I have to add, it's still DIY software. Like if you're selling this to somebody else, say like, hey, you should get this for your kid to play with. They can reprogram everything if they learn how.
Right.
It's not like you give them a Google Pixel and, oh no, you can't go there. You're not allowed to touch that part.
Yes. I mean, so so it's 139 with the low power CPU and 189 with the upgun CPU. Why would you want the low power CPU? Okay. A little bit less than the half size 100 bodies. Cool. My goal is not to put a separate digital service SIM in each tablet or laptop or whatever, but to have one cellular wireless access point that all my devices can share, including my desktop, in case the fiber goes out, which it has once or twice.
And having a pocket console attached to that SIM card is definitely handy.
This would be a little over twice the size of my wireless access point, which might make it easier to find in the attaché bag. And having a keyboard and a small screen. Oh, isn't that cute? The screen lights up with focus. This one rotates. That one rotates. But these two blink. That's cute. You know, I like these people. I notice it has a firm price, but it says pre-order. But you know, for small batches, they need to get pre-orders to fire off the batch. But that's a maybe. You know, my wife was one of the people heartbroken when BlackBerry ceased making real Blackberries.
I had a BlackBerry until my phone company abandoned it and said, we're not going to support the radio bands that you're using. And I'm currently, my primary phone, I have two phones with SIM cards, but they're cheap.
Yeah.
If you go with tello.com, they're a reseller and you can go as low as $5 a month for a SIM card.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, my primary phone, the one with the voice connection, is a Titan Pocket.
Uh-huh.
And it's very much like a BlackBerry, except it runs Android and it supports 4G.
Oh, real keys?
Yeah. Well, as real as a BlackBerry. It's a little difficult to do IRC at speed, but I do it anyway because I want to use IRC in bed.
Right.
I think the BlackBerry keyboard was marginally better, but this is good.
Yeah.
Titan Pocket it's a good. If you really, really want a BlackBerry, get a Titan Pocket.
Yeah.
And don't buy it from Amazon.
Well, yeah. Yeah. That looks plausible.
That little Lego brick in the center is a fingerprint scanner and a unlock key. The screen is touch sensitive. I think the keyboard might be touch drag sensitive, but I can't remember.
Cool.
I mean, if it is, I've turned it off. But the screen is touch sensitive.
Cool. This is what I'm currently using for phone. It's an actual Android in a retro flip case with a touch screen. It was built for construction contractors and branded with Caterpillar brand.
Looks good.
It's
I'm guessing that's a really strong hinge.
really strong hinge. It's supposed to be able to take a 6 to 10 foot drop to concrete, 10 meters of water submersion for a rather long period of time. Run it over with construction equipment provided it's closed. And when I called up my phone company to see if who had been selling them, if they had them in stock, it had been discontinued. Delightfully, the one time I've managed to make it to the MIT swap meet since Plague, there was somebody with one new in box at half price. I didn't haggle. Yeah, it looks like a razor, exactly. It's At my son-in-law's suggestion, I downloaded a couple of Star Trek original series cast group photos to be my lock page and home screen. Oh yeah, that the talk about spam mailboxes reminds me I need to go back over to Software Tool and Die and clean out my spam box. Oh, every once in a while, somebody I want to hear from uses that address still. I didn't realize how close their location in was to where I used to live in Oak Square. Maybe they moved. Yes, they're still in business. They charge my American Express every month. My 1992 website is still up. I probably should replace it with a pointer to where my current current stuff is. But it's still there.
Who remembers the Oak Square streetcar?
Yeah, I am not old enough to have actually seen the A line run.
I used to sometimes go from downtown, coming back from a doctor's appointment. I used to take I took bus to Cleveland Circle, took what's now the C line down to Mass Ave station, and then came back on the Watertown line, and then took the bus from Newton Corner. But I remember Oak Square.
Yep.
I was still running the Oak Square streetcar at that time.
Yeah, I could wish the streetcar had been running when we were living there, but it wasn't. But we did have an express bus at rush hour. But the which was an improvement over the express bus service in Marlboro, let me tell you.
Another streetcar I used to take was coming back from the same appointment. I used to take the red line to Harvard Square, and then I would take the streetcar from Harvard Square to Watertown, and then transfer to the Watertown car over to Newton Corner. The buses were not the T buses, they were Middlesex and Boston Street Railway. I think
I don't even remember that one.
the MTA bought the Middlesex and Boston, I believe, in 1962 when they were bankrupt.
Uh-huh.
And the Eastern Mass Street Railway was purchased around the same time. But from my house, I could walk to a Middlesex and Boston stop.
Always nice. So it was this condo building that had a mudslide wipe out the temporary retaining wall holding the hill up above their parking lot. And Software Tool and Die is just 2 doors down from the abandoned construction site that's washing into
Mm-hmm.
the redundant
The building that got hit is the foundation, okay?
The building didn't get hit. The two cars in this corner of the parking lot got covered by mud. Might even have been those two. The let's see. I think I can pull up the on the ground reporting. Yes, there it is. Fox 25 went out to take a look. There's trees and mud that came through the wood board stuck between the angled I-beams that were forming a retaining wall. And I mean, that looks like the same red car in the corner that was in the quote satellite end quote aerial photo. It's just nose in instead of nose out today. But that's the extent of the damage. You know, it's not terrible, but it's still that hillside is now unsafe, and they need to repair the retaining wall, strengthen the retaining wall, and maybe take measures to make sure the mud doesn't cross the parking lot into the cellar. Somewhat creepy, but it looks, there's some suspicion that denuding the construction site that was never constructed at the top of the hill may have contributed to the soil collapse. That looks like a failed parking lot. It's slowly being reclaimed by the earth. So it's somebody's supposedly going to build there, but they haven't done anything with it. Anyway, retaining walls are difficult. The earth likes to subside. That's just what it does. Says a man with a retaining wall in his backyard. Well, you know, wood retaining wall isn't bad if the iron holding the wood in place is long enough, strong enough, buried in the ground long enough, and spaced about half as far apart as those. But if you drove twice as many, twice as deep, there'd be 4 times the skull-splitting pounding, driving the residents crazy.
Not to mention cost.
Not to
Construction projects are all about you're trying to optimize the cost and optimize the durability and optimize the safety, and something's got to give. Like
and
you
inconvenience
could build
the
it
butters.
invulnerable, but it would cost millions of dollars to do it.
Yes, and if it costs 4 times as much and takes 4 times as long, you're annoying the customers 4 times as much as well. But the irony, the building that was threatened with the mudslide has mass carpet cleaning as one of the tenants. And World Insurance, Bayside Remodeling. Ironies, ironies. But at least the mud didn't get into the swimming pool. So we were 35 years ago, we lived up in this corner. Which wasn't a 3-family, but was divided into one anyway. Kind of weird. Anyway, that's oh, the tree fell on the retaining wall. Ah. So it wasn't that the mud brought the tree brought the mud down. Yeah, the pilings probably weren't deep enough, as well as too far apart. Just a little weird that, I know right where that is when something shows up in the news.
At least it wasn't molasses.
Yes. Oh. I'm going to save that tab so I can bookmark it. So that's what I have to share.
Why, thank you. It has been appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Now, I was considering having as the historical vignette this year's decryptions of Mary, Queen of Scots' most recently discovered letters. But the academic controversy about some of her other letters, I didn't want to wade into that mess. And it's not the most exciting. I just didn't want to be doing the NSA every year, but yeah, this was a nice one, and it fit nicely with the Tetra break.
I actually have a question about Jitsi. I used to have a little avatar icon on my thing here, and for some reason when I connected tonight, it disappeared. And when I went through all the configuration menus, I couldn't find where that was set. And does anyone remember how that was set?
Previously, it was set using Gravatar, and if you don't see a setting to set your Gravatar on, oh yeah, no, it's under Profile, Settings, Profile, and you give your Gravatar email and authenticate. So that's where it is.
Well, that should be there. Unless Gravatar went down or something.
I don't. They reset some things when they quote upgraded the free site. The
The free Jitsi site or the free Gravatar site?
See Jitsi. Gravatar is an aggregator of personal information that I won't touch. So I won't have an icon here. But the free Jitsi had remembered my choice of background images, and it forgot them. So it probably forgot your Gravatar at the same time it forgot my backgrounds. Since it forgot my camera when I accidentally disconnected, not having a background image sort of doesn't matter. Oh, we've got a whiteboard. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I think it's just they did a bit too much of a reset, didn't pull over our unauthenticated profiles. And that may be because they were initiating passwords. Um, do I have? I cannot. I thought I could pull up the information on Mary Queen of Scots quickly, and it's not immediately popping up. Here's my.
I saw a documentary on YouTube that casually mentioned that Mary was using wrap the message around a cylinder obfuscation method. And if you did that and you didn't do anything else, were there people who literally couldn't figure out that you needed a cylinder of a certain size to do it? Like, was it really an effective method?
Um, I'm not sure if that worked since Greek and Roman times well, but that's not what Mary was using to my knowledge.
That doesn't surprise me that the film was wrong.
Yes.
I don't think it said that was the only thing she was doing in the realm of encryption, but they mentioned that, and I was like, in the 1500s, would no one guess that you need to wrap it around something? And you need to know the radius, but you could just keep trying different radiuses until it works.
You are correct. That is the uh, standard technique for cracking that. But if it's not clear text, if it's uh, if it's done as a super encryption, it's hard to tell when you've picked the right diameter,
Yeah.
and that's when it becomes safe. Oh, well, is that where it was? Oh, okay. Um, bibliography.
Yeah, I mentioned Errol Flynn movie. There was a Lord Wolfingham in one of his movies who was Elizabeth's Secretary of State. Movie was it's right behind me. Let me see.
Yep. Walsingham may have been officially working for him.
Yep. The movie was Seahawk, which of course was totally made up.
Right. There's the link to get the 5 links here. And while there's academic debates as to which of the deciphered letters used in evidence against her were authentic versus forgeries by her jailers, this new trove of 50 have decent provenance because they're either addressed to or were written by, speaking about her to somebody else or whatever, by the French ambassador to Queen Elizabeth, friend of Mary's, and they're in the French archives. So that, yeah, these are authentic. And they were misfiled as Italian. So the researchers were trying to break them, thinking they were an Italian nomenclator code, as opposed to Mary of Scots, who was more French than Scots, talking to her French friends in French. So it was a bit of a shock when it turned out to be French Mary, and when it was in the Italian file. But anyway, it was, there's no question that Walsingham had cracked it, since he at least forged one letter to Mary from her supporters, asking her a pointed question to get her to reply a little more unambiguously that she was supporting her allies' revolt. The classic ruse, if you use a non-authenticating cipher as implicit authentication, only my friend that has the secret could have written this letter, because only my friend has the secret. But the rest of us can just crack your cipher, derive the secret, and forge letters. We can convince you to do things that you shouldn't have done, like incriminate yourself in treason. Yes, there are a number of punctuation letter combinations that will turn into emojis if you're not careful. This can be annoying. If I understand correctly, they used a hill climbing algorithm for computer assisted cracking of the cipher. But as with so many of these retro cryptology projects, the hard first step was classifying the odd characters of manuscript into digital codes for the screwy letter forms for which there aren't letters, and figuring out which ones were different and which ones were just handwriting variation. You can't just use a Internet Archive OCR program to fix this.
But in a couple of years, ChatGPT will happily hallucinate and tell you what it is.
Yes. ChatGPT reminds me of certain people who I will not name, You can ask them anything, they'll give you an answer, whether they know or not.
You're not referring to salespeople, are you?
No, no, I wasn't. But um, you're not wrong. As you can see, there's some characters where they aren't sure if it's the same character with diacritics or different characters. Um, over here. Oh, there we go. And here's one. A security conference this year used the Pigpen or Masonic cipher on the conference official souvenir coffee mug. If you know the name of the conference, it gives you a nice expected word, and this repeated section here and here is 2023 with markers to indicate that it's numerals. I'm not sure why the marker that starts numerals starts the next word without being closed. Maybe it's shift to numeric and unshift back to alpha. But classic Pigpen cipher. The idea that they needed to put hint this is a Pigpen cipher at the bottom, and I guess is because it's a general information security conference and not a cryptologic history conference. At a cryptologic history conference, that would be insulting to have as a hint. When are we going to see co-branding? Well, there's some really excellent memes on the intertubes with malicious co-branding. Powdered wigs coming back into style. Well, three-cornered hats will come into style in about 3 months. I was an enthusiastic participant in the bicentennial nearly 50 years ago. The 250th of the Boston Tea Party is this December. The 250th American Revolution celebrations will run from 2023 to 2033. Nobody talks about 250. Yeah, Randy. Maine, we celebrated the state's sesquicentennial at 150. So I think at a quarter millennium, we can celebrate the Tea Party, even if it doesn't end in even hundreds. Anybody that can answer didn't get disconnected. So, three-cornered hats may come back into fashion. I don't think I'm going to get a new pair of knee pants, though. Oh, I'd forgotten they had a countdown timer on the website. That's cute.
I heard an amusing information security story the other day.
Oh, yeah?
So Ring wanted to do some kind of a pet collar with like you put a collar on your pet and that's linked to an online database so that like if the pet is found, um, you can look it up or figure out how to get the pet back to where it came from. So they thought about it and they tried a bunch of different variations, and they ended up with, well, batteries are a problem because the pet might take it apart and eat it, and the batteries can die, and uh, that's a problem. So it has to have no battery. So they ended up with, let's put a QR code on it. Now, if you know QR codes, you can fit a name, address, phone number, and like some QR code URLs are pretty long. You could fit a
Yeah.
lot in a you can fit a lot in a QR code as text, the size of something you could print precisely on a pet collar.
Yep.
And they didn't do that. In order to use this thing, you need to scan the QR code with their app, look up something in an online database, and then you might get the answer instead of just putting 4 lines of text in a QR code. And hopefully they would put the phone number as like actual letters on the other side. But it's comically missing the point kind of a thing. Like
Yep.
if you're going to use a QR code, just put the information in the QR code.
Yeah, but they want their service to be inserted in the middle.
Yeah, it has to be Ring.
Yeah. And the does no good if they cease to support it. So typical. The internet of shit.
Yep. Even when there's no battery.
The veterinarian installed veterinarian readable chip requires no battery, can't be reached, can't get pulled off on a fence, can't snag on a fence.
That seems to be an accepted solution. If you don't mind registering in a national database, like everyone has agreed, that's where the information goes, and you put a RFID reflector chip inside the cat or dog, and problem solved.
Well, it's much better in the national registry than in a private corporation.
Yeah.
If you don't want the government to know that you have a dog, that's a different question. If you're trying to hide your dog from the city, because you don't want to comply with rabies vaccines because you're a dipshit, or whatever, I guess you might have a problem with a registry, but I think you then just have a problem.
getting kind of quiet.
Yep.
So why don't we think about closing out? We have anything else?
That's what I had, including my extras.
Yeah. We even got some Babylon 5 in there and some Star Trek.
Those weren't my extras.
No. Jabber and mine, mostly. And my password is not peekaboo.
Good.
Our plan for October, November, December. Anything booked just yet? Anyone have any thoughts of what they might like to see?
I was working on my own content management system that I'm going to want to present when it's done, but the software is not done, so I don't have a presentation yet, but expect that to come as a presentation offer sometime.
See, I might be out of town next week. I'm looking at my calendar. Next month, I mean.
I'm having difficulty predicting when I'm going to be out of town because it depends when my aged mother and sister need help. So it can happen on somewhat short notice.
I just checked my calendar just before I leave. I've got 2 train trips. One will be going to Washington on the train
Nice.
for a weekend with my wife, and the other will be going to New Orleans.
You're using the vaguely high speed Acela?
Washington will be Acela.
Good.
The trip to New Orleans will be via the Lakeshore Limited to Chicago and then the city of New Orleans.
Yep. The classic name trains.
Yep.
Very good.
And last time I took the train from New Orleans, I walked from the hotel to the train station. But New Orleans has gotten a little bit rougher lately, and so I'm going to walk over to the nearest streetcar. It's only a block away, so they do electronic passes on the streetcars. I'll take that on about a block.
I'd walk to the streetcar just to take the streetcar.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite restaurants is right on the St. Charles streetcar.
Excellent.
It's called the Camellia Grill. They were in business when I went to college, and they are still in business.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And they're not owned by Brennan's. The Brennan family owns a lot of restaurants in New Orleans now. Commander's Palace was their original. And they had one in the French Quarter, Brennan's, Breakfast at Brennan's, which was a thing. I've eaten at both.
Jerry, are you trying to avoid airplanes?
Not really. but it's so much of a hassle getting on the aircraft, and then somebody else is flying it, and then you have to get from the airplane to your destination, and then vice versa. So I don't enjoy flying on airlines anymore.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Helicopter would be fine as long as I sit in the front. Same when I went on a tourist trip in Alaska. I flew co-pilot on a de Havilland Beaver.
Oh, really?
My last flight in Vietnam was on a de Havilland Beaver, where I actually was the co-pilot.
Do you still have your baseball bat?
I still have my baseball bat. No,
The one you had in the copter back in Vietnam?
no, crew chief used the baseball bat.
Oh,
Their crew chief's bigger and stronger than the pilots. And considering we had a big armored chair, it was a little bit hard to reach in the back.
yeah.
I mean, I know a guy that, which I have a picture of here, life was a bummer in Vietnam with a guy sticking his ass out of the side of the helicopter. And I know the guy who did that. He actually lives here in Massachusetts. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. Okay, I'm going to stop the stream.
Okay.